Okay, on behalf of Pearson, we hope you have a really, really productive morning. Change is the only constant in life, said a Greek philosopher. The world education is changing. Governments, parents, students want more from us education providers. They want opportunities, better jobs, a better life. Let's see how we at Pearson are facing this challenge.
The world of education is changing. Thinking digital, going global, becoming individual. At Pearson, we're changing too. Expanding our focus from educational publishing to the world's learning company. Now we've taken the future in our hands and crafted a brand identity that expresses everything about our business and is built for today's challenges and tomorrow's opportunities. Our new logo captures the combination of excitement, curiosity, and individuality that represent the true spirit of learning. Our brand identity is vibrant and practical, modern yet classic. Irresistibly personal, consistently accessible, and seriously good fun. Powerful enough to capture attention, flexible enough to appeal to everyone, expressive enough to tell our story, unique enough to make people remember it. It's been designed to be used, and built on, and played with, by all of us for one reason: to help us deliver better learning experiences to our millions of learners around the world. And just like the future we're so excited about, our new brand identity is ready to go right now.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, please. Feel free. Thank you very much. Well, before we start with the conference, let me give you some housekeeping announcements. Make sure you keep your phones in silent mode, please, to avoid instructions. You can do it now. Switch them to silent mode, okay? Now, please take some moments to see what's inside your bag. Can you help me there? One of the things you have received is a conference program, okay? So I want to say a few things there. Make sure you know where to go after this plenary. We'll have, this is the Cusco ballroom. After the plenary, we'll have a coffee break and book exhibition, which will be on the 3rd floor, right? So after the plenary is over, we will all go to the 3rd floor for the book exhibition. After the book exhibition, we'll have simultaneous workshops, and for that, you will have received one of these 2 papers, right? And that means that if you have received the pink one, you have registered for Yolanda Melindez's workshop, semi-plenary, and if you have received this one, you will be attending Majid Safadaran's semi-plenary. Okay, so please make sure you don't lose this, because this is your ticket, this is your entrance ticket to each of the semi-plenaries. You have to hand this in on entrance, okay? Keep it with you at all times. Also, we kindly ask you to help us improve our conferences and workshops by filling in this survey, which is inside your files. Of course, at the end of the conference, with your opinions, and hand it in to a Pearson representative before the end of the conference. You can exchange this for a Pearson gift. All right? So it's very important for you to fill it in, very important for us to have your opinions. All right. Now, during the break, we encourage you to visit the wonderful book exhibition we have prepared for you and take a look at all the stands. There's a lot of new information that I'm sure will interest you. Also, please take some moments to look at the emergency exits around you. so that we can all proceed to them safely in case we need to. And now, without further ado, let me introduce Mike Mayer. Mike Mayer is Director of Global Scale of English at Pearson. In his role, Mike heads up research into creating audience-specific learning objectives aligned to the global scale of English, and works with content teams to ensure that these learning objectives underpin all new products and services created by Pearson English. On leaving university, Mark worked as a teacher of English in France before entering the world of publishing as a lexicographer. Mike joined Pearson in 2003 and headed up the dictionaries list until his move to the global scale of English in 2013. The talk today is about standards in education. And he says this about that. Since its publication in 2001, the Common European Framework of Reference has become a standard framework of reference for teachers, learners, and content creators around the world, moving beyond its European roots. This presentation looks at recent research carried out by Pearson with teachers from over 50 countries around the world to extend the Common European Framework in order to develop a more granular framework that informs both the teaching and testing of English. The presenter will explore how the GSE learning objectives have been used to develop an end-to-end solution for the teaching and assessment of English, and give an overview of the resources and tools that have been made freely available to support teachers and institutions. Please help me welcome Mike with a warm round of applause.
Okay, good morning. Oh, nice. I was just about to say I've arrived from London. It was 21 hours door to door. I've been awake since 3:36 this morning, and so I'm relying on your energy to carry me through the next hour and 15 minutes, but I think we're off to a good start. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me down the back? Yes, nodding. I hope you've got good eyesight down the back, because you will have to read the screen from time to time. This is billed as a plenary. What does a plenary mean? It means that, you have no option. You had to come here. You had no choice. It will be slightly more of a workshop. I don't really do lectures. I don't really do suits, but I put this one on just for you. So this will be more of a workshop. There'll be some activities, and my beautiful Pearson colleagues will be handing out a little worksheet for us to look at to help move the presentation along. So, as Cecilia mentioned, I head up the Global Scale of English. If anybody didn't understand my previous job of a lexicographer, so lexicographer is somebody who writes dictionaries. So I spent 20 years writing dictionaries before I escaped into this brave new world of measuring learner proficiency. And so today, I want us to look at learner proficiency, and just to kick this off, what type of language do you use yourself to describe learner proficiency? Now, I don't mean good and bad, or terrible, or useless, or whatever, but what type of language do you use, you can just shout out, to describe learner proficiency? Low, intermediate, advanced, okay, right. So that's the kind of, I mean, I often hear that, and I think that's true, that most teachers talk about, beginner, intermediate, advanced. So, I think we might have a slight problem with the slides, because this was supposed to be animated, and it's not. Anyway, while we sort out that problem, Before I was a lexicographer, I was a teacher, so I used to teach English in France. And it was in the 1980s. Hands up anybody who wasn't even born in 1985? Yes, quite a lot. Okay, so when I was teaching English in France, I was teaching adults, and almost everybody used the Cambridge English course. And it had 3 levels. We had the red book, the blue book, the green book, and that was beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Okay? And then I went away, I did a postgraduate, I came back to teaching, and then everybody was using this Oxford course, Headway. And you'll notice, subtle difference, we now have 5 levels. And so, beginner, pre-intermediate, intermediate, upper intermediate, and advanced. And I think that shows a realization that actually intermediate is massive. There are so many different levels of proficiency that people call intermediate. And it was impossible as a teacher to move a learner from intermediate to advanced using one book. One book is traditionally 90, 120 hours of instruction. No way are you going to move somebody from intermediate to advanced with one book. So we had pre-intermediate, upper intermediate. Bit of a publishing opportunity as well to sell a few more books. But the issue around having this really general terminology, so intermediate, is as a teacher, if you're looking at materials, and I'm sure you constantly have reps from different publishing companies bringing you books for you to review, and you really didn't know if the Oxford Intermediate was the same level as the Cambridge Intermediate, or the Macmillan Intermediate, or the Pearson Intermediate. And actually, as a teacher who probably had a bit of experience of using different intermediate books, you knew they weren't the same level. You know, the Oxford Intermediate is more challenging, or the Cambridge Intermediate covers different things. And so this was one of the issues that was around in the 80s when I was teaching, and still in the 90s. And so in the 90s, some research was carried out to look at how can we define learner proficiency a bit more precisely. Okay, and this research, which was published in 2001 as the Common European Framework, took the form of learning objectives. So these, what have become known as the can-do statements because of the way in which they're written. Can follow short, simple written directions, can write very simple personal letters. These learning objectives were created, given to teachers, and those teachers were asked to rate them for proficiency level. Think about your weakest students, what can they do? Think about your best students, what can they do? All the data was collected in, that data was crunched, analyzed, bang, Council of Europe published it in 2001 as the Common European Framework. Okay, quick question, show of hands, who's heard of the Common European Framework? Okay, quite a few. The rest of you are just going to have to guess the first few activities. So, my beautiful assistants, now is the time to hand out those worksheets. So you will be receiving one of these little worksheets. I think we've got enough for one each, but if not, you can share. It's not so precious you need to have it. So if you just take a moment to, okay. Do I have what? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so when you can see your handout, you will see there are a few questions. They're multiple choice, so you can make a guess if you don't know the answer, and I suspect you will have to guess the answer to many of these. So let's start with the first question, which is this research in the 1990s. We know it was European, but where was it carried out? So just have a look. You should have a nice Pearson pen in your bag. You can just circle A, B, C, or D, and then we'll have a quick show of hands to see that everybody has come up with an answer. Okay, everybody can see a handout? Nope, there you go. And now I can't see one, can I? Yes, I can. Okay, so where was the Common European Framework research carried out? Let's have a quick show of hands. Was it in France? Okay, let's not do this one because I can't really see that. What's that? That's like, France, be brave. Okay, go France. Germany. Got 2 for Germany. Okay. United Kingdom. You don't have to just please me. It doesn't have to be the United Kingdom, okay? Okay, and D, Switzerland. 4 people from Switzerland. And so, before we change computers, I have no idea what's going to appear on this next screen. It's supposed to be animated. Who knows? Let's see. Oh. Switzerland, so that's completely killed my first joke of the picture when I was going to say it was the United Kingdom, obviously. No. The research was carried out in Switzerland, which, you know, is an interesting fact you can tell your friends about at dinner tonight. I think actually it's more than just an interesting fact. If you think about the influence that the Common European Framework has had around the world, and that research started in one tiny little country in Europe, and it was actually somebody's master's degree. And it's gone on to influence language teaching and assessment obviously in Europe, but also in Latin America, in the Middle East, and in Asia. It's been massively influential, and it all started out in Switzerland. He keeps talking, which has a very interesting language culture because they have 4 national languages. So language is kind of in the air there. Oh, that looks promising. Oh, no, not yet. Okay. Well, just talk amongst yourselves for the next couple of minutes, okay? Nobody fall asleep. Do you think we're good? Do we have my clicker has gone across? Okay, so, back on track. Pearson. Pearson. Why do you feel, given that the Common European Framework has been so influential and so successful, why do you need to do something different? Very good question. The reason is, anything that has been used, anything that is successful, people start criticizing. And it doesn't do this, and it's not appropriate for my group of learners, and I can't do this, and it's not very practical. So the project that I'm heading up was really to try and address some of these limitations that have been leveled against the Common European Framework. And here we go. First one is obvious. It was developed in Europe for a European context. This was the height of the European Union before some of us decided to leave. So people were moving between countries for education and business, and they wanted to establish a standard to measure somebody's French, Spanish, German, English, all European languages on the same standard. It was for Europe. Is it appropriate for the Middle East? Is it appropriate for Asia? Is it appropriate for Latin America? We wanted at least to test that out. Who in the room teaches primary and lower secondary? Okay, so shock horror. The Common European Framework was never developed for young learners. It was developed for adults. And you would be excused for thinking it was developed for young learners because every publisher, including Pearson, puts Common European Framework levels on the young learners' books. Naughty, naughty, because it was never created for young learners. So we thought there was an opportunity to do that. Shh, who's not turned their phone off? Embarrassing. Oh, answer it. Okay. Who teaches English for academic purposes? A few, okay, hands down. Anybody teach English for business purposes? Okay, a few. So, Common European Framework was developed really for general English communication. Education and business are kind of domains, so there is some information that's relevant to those domains, but if you're trying to plan a syllabus, a curriculum, even a lesson plan, you've not really got much information in Common European Framework to support that. There's an uneven distribution of the learning objectives across the skills, and we'll have a little look at that. The Common European Framework has very wide levels, and we'll look at the implications of those wide levels. The Common European Framework starts at A1. A1 already assumes you can do some things in language. So there is no information at the very beginning of language learning. Okay, in Europe, people are not really below A1 for very long. You soon can say your name, you can soon do the basics. So the decision was taken, we won't publish any information below A1. The same is not true in Asia. Let me tell you, some of those students, or in the Middle East where it's a different script, people spend quite a long time below A1. So there was something we wanted to do then. And then practitioners, meaning teachers and publishers, found the Common European Framework quite hard to use. I don't know, quick show of hands, who's read the Common European Framework? Wow. So the people who are looking very tired are the ones who have read through that blue book, which is quite, it's not an easy read and it's quite difficult to find the learning objectives. So we wanted to make that information more accessible to teachers. So, next question. You have 4 options. How many levels are there in the Common European? Do not shout out. Exam conditions. And if you think you know the answer, don't shout out. This is an exam. If you think you know the answer, think again. Okay, so who, and I think we know who, thinks it's 6? Hands down. Who thinks it's 9? Who thinks it's 10? Who thinks it's 11? Who doesn't have a clue? Okay, so if you said 6 levels, I am prepared to give you half a point. You can have half a point because honestly, if you ask most teachers how many levels, they will say 6. And A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2 are what people generally know. However, I did say think again. If you've read the Common European Framework, I'm hoping, sir, you got the correct answer. There are 9 levels. Okay, because A2, B1, B2 are all double levels. Okay, wow, that was obviously a very exciting revelation. Okay, so again, as if your dinner party tonight is not interesting enough, here's another fact to share with people. And Again, it's not just an interesting fact, in my opinion, because A2, A2 plus is not one level divided into two. It's two levels stuck together to make one. So, as teachers, maybe you've had the experience that learners seem to be moving through A1 quite nicely. Really making progress. We get to A2 and then, how long before we get to B1? It feels like learning is slowing down, right? And there are obviously many reasons why it takes a long time to get to B1, but one of those reasons is A2 is twice as big as A1. A2 has got twice as much information to master as A1. So it's not really just a detail. If you had read the original research carried out in Switzerland, then you would know there were 10 levels. So there was a level below A1 called tourist. But as I said, in Europe, people generally get to A1 quite quickly, so the decision was taken not to publish tourist level. Did anybody say 11? I can't remember. Was there anybody in the room who said 11? Because actually, there is another level below tourist. So 11 is a possible answer, and that level is a beautiful English word, which means, it also means like a fine covering of snow, and people use it if, for example, I would say I have a of Japanese, for example. It just means you know 2 or 3 words, and it is a smattering of, so people could have a smattering of English, you just know a few words. Okay, cracking on, question 3. Exam conditions. Which of the 4 skills has the most information in the Common European Framework? Exam conditions, don't shout out. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so who thinks it's A, reading? Okay, a few latecomers there. Who thinks it's B, listening? A couple. Who thinks it's C, speaking? Whoa. And who thinks it's D, writing? Oh. Okay, so we're agreed that it's the productive skills. It's actually speaking. So around 2/3 of all the information in the Common European Framework is about speaking. And if you look across all of the skills, around 2/3 covers A2, B1, B2, or A2, A2 plus, B1, B1 plus, B2, B2 plus. Okay, so that means if you're trying to assess a learner's proficiency in reading at A1, you don't really have very much information in the Common European Framework to help you measure that learner's proficiency. So that's where we wanted to do something. Okay, here we have the slope of language learning from beginner to mastery. And here we have our learners, the little blue dots on that slope. And here we have progress, and some people move faster than others. And, you know, this is language. It's not, you don't just keep getting better and better. They're up and down and up and down, and you have a vacation, and you're just starting a new term, aren't you? So they'll all have gone back down again, and you revise again. And then the Common European Framework came along and created these descriptors or learning objectives, can-do statements to describe what people at different levels of proficiency can do with the language. Okay, the Common European Framework very focused on the practical applications of a language. It's not about the grammar, it's not about the vocabulary. Obviously you need that, but it's if you have that, what can you do? So it was an action-oriented approach to language teaching. And then it was published. I'll give you the 6 levels there, but notice A2, B1, B2 are wider than the other levels. And if you can see that at the back, we have 3 learners, learner 1, learner 2, learner 3. Okay, so if we're using Common European Framework to measure proficiency, learner 1 and learner 2 are the same level. They're both A2. Learner 3 is B1. You would assume from that learner 1 and learner 2 were pretty close in proficiency and that learner 3 is much better. When the reality, of course, is that learner 2 and learner 3 are very close in proficiency level. So this is one of the problems. If you only have 6 or even 9 points of reference on a proficiency scale, it's quite hard to see the detail of where people are within one of those levels. Okay. So, this is what we've been doing. I don't know, does this shine? No, now what did that do? Quick. Don't look at the budgets, quick, get them off the screen. Shh. Okay. Forget all that information. Top secret, okay? Nobody from OUP in the audience, is there? Okay. Okay, so on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see some more interesting numbers, and these are numbers from 10 to 90, and that is the global scale of English. Okay, 10 to 90, aligned to the Common European Framework. On this side of the screen, you can see some slightly less attractive numbers from minus 5.39 to over 3.8. Okay, so these numbers down this side of the screen, this is the data from that original research project in Switzerland. So you remember teachers had to rate the can-do statements for difficulty. When they'd done that and the data was crunched, the Common European Framework was actually a list of learning objectives, can-do statements, from the easiest to the most difficult, and each one had one of these numbers against it. Okay. However, if you're teaching learners of a language and you tell them your level is minus 3.23, that's not the greatest, most motivating story. But don't worry, if you practice hard, you might become minus 2.19. No, it's not a great story. So what we've done is we've taken that original scale, that original proficiency scale from the Common European Framework, and just transposed it onto a positive scale, 10 to 90. So when you leave today and you've got all these fascinating facts in your head, the one thing you must, that I would like you to remember is the global scale of English and the Common European Framework are not different things. They are exactly the same scale. Global scale of English is not a TOEFL scale. It's not an IELTS scale. It is the Common European Framework scale expressed as these numbers from 10 to 90. Okay. So, you thought that was fun. Wait till you do question 4. So question 4, I'd like you to think about how long it takes to make progress in a language. Okay? And we're going to start at A1. And we're going to start with what I would call a bit of a slow learner. Okay, so this learner has a very different first language to English. So possibly, an Asian language. This learner is not motivated. I'm sure you're all familiar with an unmotivated learner. And this learner has low exposure to English. So maybe 2 hours a week, okay? Very low exposure to English. So really, the odds are against this learner. Very different first language, not motivated, low exposure to English. exam condition, but you can do it with the person next to you. Don't just shout out, but think about how many hours of learning, so teaching, I would say, plus homework, but conscious study, does it take to move from A1 to A2? Don't shout out. Talk to your neighbor. Write a number down on a piece of paper. What time am I supposed to finish, do you know? Because I will not be on time. But it's fine, it's Latin America. I can be late, can't I? So, okay. I can be 10:30-ish, so okay. Okay? Keep thinking about that learner, because here we have learner 2. No, that was me. I forgot my own animation. Did everybody see that? Yes, of course you did. Okay, right, well, I'll give you that one then. So the depressing news is it can take 480 hours for that learner to move from A1 to A2. So just think how many academic years that is. How many school years in your school in Japan do you need to get to A2? Okay, here's what I thought was coming next. Our slightly faster learner. Now, the faster learner, first language, are much more similar to English, so probably a European language. This learner is motivated. This learner has a high exposure to English, so maybe 2 hours every day. Okay, so regular exposure. Again, little conversation. How many hours to get from A1 to A2 for this learner? Okay. Okay, everybody got a number? Okay. The very keen student, how many? 200. 240. 4. 204. Okay. Any more? 300. You're all very pessimistic. 128. We're getting warm. Yeah. 95. 95 hours. And I'll show you at the end of the presentation where you can go to find the research behind that. I didn't just make these numbers up on the plane. These come from research, okay? So, right. Now I know when I'm clicking. So, how about how many hours to get from B1 to B2? Don't shout out. And I want 2 numbers for the same students. Very different first language, very similar first language. Not motivated, motivated. Low exposure, high exposure. Okay, you'll be guessing, so just write a number down. I'm going to go a bit further down the back because these people are hiding down the back here. So, any suggestions? How many hours for our low and slow? For the fast? Can we start with the slow? For the slow, 200 for the slow. Oh, we've got 600, 500, 300, 700, 800, I heard at the back. Okay. Do I hear any advance on 800 hours? 850. Any higher down the back? 900, I hear. Any higher than 900? Okay. There may be people sleeping in the hotel. Do not scream when you see the answer. Shh. 1100 hours. So how about the fast learner? $500? 600, 300, okay, about 400. Okay, so quite surprising, right? So, like with most things in life, the better you are, the longer it takes to get to the next level. So if you think about running, you know, if I ran 100 meters today, God forbid, and then I practiced for a year and really trained and didn't eat all the pastries at breakfast, maybe I could improve my time by like a second, but Usain Bolt would spend his whole life just to do 0.1 of a second, right? So the better you are, the harder it is to improve. And language is like, it's like this, it's like a cone. So it's not just about how many different things you can do, but it's also about how well can you do them, how many different contexts can you do them in, how wide is your vocabulary, how good your fluency, etc., etc. So, 110 hours. Again, think of that poor Japanese learner. Actually, that poor Japanese learner is probably never going to get to B1. Even at university, most Japanese learners of English are A2. They have a huge stigma about their ability in language learning. They're the lowest in Asia, and about 80% of the population of English learners is A2 and below. It takes a long time. They've got a lot to cope with. So, our hypothesis, our proposition with the global scale of English is, if we're able to show learners that they're making progress more frequently than you can using the Common European Framework, you can motivate them. So, you know, those learners moving from B1 to B2, you're 43, and then you're 46, and then you're 49, and then you're 52, and then you're 55. Yes, you're still B1. We're not saying you will learn English faster using the global scale of English. That will be a great story the day we can say that. However, we can show them that within B1, they're getting towards B2. And as language teachers, you know, there is no miracle to learning a language. You just have to keep practicing, practicing, practicing. So if you can motivate learners to stay the course, they can see that they're improving, we believe that will have a positive impact on learning. Okay, so you remember that 65% of all the information in Common European Framework was for speaking. So we decided to create some additional learning objectives. And we did this by looking at, obviously, Common European Framework, but national curricula, course books, and we created new can-do learning objectives, expressed exactly in the same way as the Common European Framework. And then using the same methodology, we sent those new learning objectives to teachers around the world. Now, Common European Framework, all the research, Switzerland, tiny little country, 1990s, News Alert. We didn't really have the internet in the 1990s. It was very difficult to contact teachers around the world. Today, much easier. So we've worked with teachers from over 50 countries around the world, over 6,000 teachers, and where teachers agree more than 80% of the time, we consider that to be valid data. Teachers always think, oh, it's very subjective, it's just my opinion. But when the opinion of the teacher in Argentina, in Poland, in Japan, in the Middle East, when they all agree, then that is seen as an agreed proficiency level for that particular learning objective. So only where there is 80% agreement do we add it to the sets of learning objectives. Where they don't agree, it's rejected. So only where there's over 80% agreement have we included the information and released that information to the public. Okay, now this is the bit that gets challenging now. Question 5. You've got a nice empty box, and this is where it will get very challenging for people at the back because you will have to read the screen. So if you feel you might need to move a bit closer, do feel free to walk up, take a photo, and then go back, because I sat at the back and I couldn't see it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 learning objectives for reading, and I want you to order them from the easiest to the most difficult, and just write the numbers in the box. 2, 5, 3, 4, 1, 5, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay? If we can just do it under exam conditions first. Okay? Here you go. Okay, if just one more minute. Everybody got an answer? How's this turn on? Okay. So the way this happens is one person will give their order of numbers and then everybody else in the room will disagree. That's usually what happens, okay? So who wants to be the brave person to give me their set of numbers?
Well, okay. Okay. Well, first of all, I started reading the abilities. They can do assignments, but in terms of the abilities, scheme, infer, distinguish between, can critically evaluate, can distinguish. So I have this rank. Number 3 for me is the first one, can skim, a simple academic test. Then number 5 can distinguish between the main idea and related ideas in a linguistically complex academic test. Then number 1 can distinguish between fact and opinion in a simple academic test. Maybe 5 and 1 can be changed in the place of order. I'm not sure. And number 2 can infer meaning in a linguistically complex academic test. And finally, number 4, which says can critically evaluate, because evaluation is a complex cognitive process. So the effectiveness of a simplex problem solution is.
Thank you. 3, 5, 1, 2, 4. Everybody agree? Everybody agree? No, no, no. Who's saying no? Who's saying that? I'm not saying that's the correct answer. Just the numbers.
Yes. First, number 3, then 2, 1, 5, and 4.
3,
3, 2,
1, 5, 4. 3, 2, 1, 5, 4. Okay. Okay, I'll let you warm up using this one, okay? I can see people are just staring at me a bit bemused. Okay, the answer to that was 3, 1, 4, 5, 2. 3, 1, 4, 5, 2. Okay, everybody who's cheering, I'll be coming to you for the next one. Okay, yeah, I'm coming to you for the next one. So, there we go for listening. Same activity for listening. Okay, one more minute. Okay, everybody got an answer? Yes? Kind of? I'm going to go to the person who was punching the air with glee at having got the last one correct, sir. So, your numbers are?
This time is 5, 3, 4, 1, and 2.
5, 3, 4, 1, 2. We have agreement from a few people. Disagreement down here. Who was busy? Oh, yes.
5, 3, 1, 2, and 4.
5, 3, 1, 2, and 4. You have some supporters there. Any different combination? 5, 1, 3, 2, 4. Okay, the answer there was 5, 3, 1, 4, 2. 5, 3, 1, 4, 2. Okay, writing. Okay, everybody got an answer? Walking down here, stop me if you'd like to give me a list of numbers. Somebody on this side of the room?
Okay. I think it's 2, 4, 5, 1, 3.
2, 4, 5, 1, 3. I can hear a lot of yes, yes, yes. 2, 5, 2, 5, 4, 1, 3. 2, 5, 4, 1, 3. 2, 5, 4, 1, 3.
2, 4, 5, 1, 3.
2, 4, 5, 1, 3. 2, 4, 5, 1, 3. Yes. However, look at 5 and 4. 5 and 4 are both B1 and they're 46 and 50. So actually, if you got 254, that's kind of right, you know, half a point. Yeah. Okay, for the last one, speaking, everybody needs to have an answer, because we will be checking this in a slightly different way, so everybody must have an answer, okay? So as soon as you're happy with your... Is my mic still on? Yes? Can you hear me? Okay, as soon as you're happy with your answer, okay, when you're confident with your answer, please stand up. Yes, I'm sorry. Total physical response, I'd like you to stand up once you have an answer, okay? And only when you have an answer. So if you have an answer, 5 numbers, please stand up. For people still sitting down, you will have to stand up at some point. An option is not to remain seated, so make sure you've got 5 answers and then stand up. Okay. I still see people sitting down for some reason. Everybody standing up. Okay, for everybody with an answer, if you have this answer as number 1, remain standing. If not, sit down. If you have 5, remains that, I'll be checking the papers, okay? Stay standing if you had 2. I will be checking the papers. Stay standing if your next answer was 4. Oh, we've lost a few. Okay, so 50-50 chance now, isn't it? Stay standing if your next answer is 1. So I'm guessing, unless you've invented a new number, your last answer is 3. Congratulations to those people. Okay. Surprisingly, we are running horrifically behind time, but let's not worry. Nobody needs coffee just yet, right? Good. So, this is this is the good bit. This is the free bit. This is the free bit. So everything I'm going to show you now is free. So what we've developed with our research are 4 sets of learning objectives. We have a set of learning objectives for adults learning general English. That's the one that's most similar to Common European Framework. We have a set of learning objectives for academic purposes. We have a set for business English. And we have a set for young learners, age 6 to 14. I know people want it younger than 6. It's taken us many years to get from 6 to 14. At some point we may do 4 to 6, but At the moment, it's just 6 to 14. And you can't really see the detail, certainly not at the back of the room. However, if you can see the dark blue and the light blue, the dark blue is Common European Framework. So all of the can-do statements are included in the Global Scale of English learning objectives. The light blue is the new information added for the Global Scale of English learning objectives. You probably can't see at the back, but this right-hand column here is speaking. Look at that. Speaking is still the skill which has the most information. That was not the intention. We wanted all the skills to have exactly or roughly the same amount of information. However, following the methodology, where 80% of teachers have to agree, teachers find it much easier to agree about speaking than about reading and listening. So speaking and writing, so the productive skills where there's something tangible to see, there's much easier to get agreement. Listening and reading, much more difficult. So we have to reject a lot of the information because it's just too noisy. However, we are carrying on with the research, so who knows, one day they may all be even. And so at Pearson, we're using this now to basically inform everything that we're creating. So we have the scale, the 10 to 90 scale. We've got those sets of learning objectives. Those learning objectives are being used to create the course books. And then we have assessments that enable you to measure learners' proficiency and progress on the global scale of English. So, actually I spoke too soon. The free bit comes just a little bit after this. But using learning objectives, how do people use learning objectives? I was going to ask you how you used learning objectives, but you can relax because we don't have time. So I'm going to tell you some of the answers that teachers in similar workshops have given me. So really ensuring that every lesson you teach has a clear learning objective. Why are you teaching that lesson? Have it clear in your head what the purpose of that teaching is. And ensure that the materials you're using have clear learning objectives. So increasingly, publishers include the learning objectives in the student's book or in the teacher's book, but as a teacher, you can analyze it with learning objectives and decide for yourself which is the learning objective that's being targeted. In fact, we do have a little activity, so my beautiful Pearson people who all seem to have left the room will now hand out another little, it's basically this, but I'm guessing you can't really read it on screen, but if your eyesight's amazing and you can, then you can work on the next activity, which is question 6, and decide what is the learning objective used, being targeted by 1, 2, and 3. But for those people without 20/20 vision, we have some handouts of this adult course book. So, do you want me to give some down the other side? Okay, let's go. Do you want to pass them down? Okay, let's go quick. And just pass them around, pass them around, pass them around. There'll be some more coming. Yeah, thank you. Pass them around. So you're just looking at the 3 exercise marked 1, 2, 3. And again, on your handout, you have options. I'm not asking you to make up the learning objective. You just have to decide which of those A, B, and C is the learning objective for that particular activity. There you go.
Thank you.
I think this one there. Okay, everybody see one now? Yep, good. Okay, I'm going to have to rush you just one more minute. Okay, that was a bit rushed, sorry, but we need to force on to the break. So I'm guessing most people will have done the first one. So who thinks that exercise 2A there, the reading one, was A? 2 or 3 people. Who thinks it was B? Quite a few people. Who thinks it was C? Okay, and the answer was B. It's the B, the one that has visual support. So you'll see that in the global scale of English learning objectives, we actually include the scaffolding that you might use to support learners so that you can give them credit even whilst they're still practicing. You can give them credit for being able to do something with scaffolding. Number 2, who thinks it was A? Okay, hands down. Who thinks it was B? And hands down. Who thinks it was C? And the answer there was A. Yes, A. And finally, who thinks it was A? Okay. Who thinks it was B? And who thinks it was C? Oh, pretty good. I think the answer was C, yes. And you'll notice there, if you look at the numbers, they're all kind of in that same A2 plus level. So when we're creating course books, we target learning objectives at roughly the same level. Okay, no time for chatting. No time for chatting. So, this is an obvious one, but learning objectives are a way of ensuring that what you test is what you teach. So if you use the same learning objectives to create assessment and teaching materials, you can make sure that you are testing what you teach It's a bit obvious, but it doesn't always happen. You can share learning objectives with your learners. Who shares learning objectives with their learners? So there is a growing body of evidence to suggest that if you do share learning objectives with your learners, if they know why they're actually learning something, that has a positive impact on learning, that they will learn better if they know, why am I here today? If you're teaching these kind of communicative activities, ensure that your lesson has some type of activity that enables you as a teacher to see that that particular objective has been mastered, not just by the keen student on the front row, but by everybody in the class. And then if you're focusing on speaking, again, this is from my presentations in Japan, if you're focusing on spoken communication, maybe, just maybe, don't be too bothered about the grammatical accuracy. They're going to make mistakes. They're A1 level. Of course it won't be perfect. Don't interrupt them every time they make a mistake. I'm sure you would never do that. And again, example from Japan where there's very low sort of self-esteem when it comes to learning languages. One way to boost confidence, this teacher gave the students a set of learning objectives at the beginning of the year and asked them to self-evaluate for not can you do it or can't you do it, but how confident do you feel doing this in English. Took them away, used it to think about what she was teaching that semester. The end of the semester gave the same set of learning objectives and said evaluate again, then gave them their original questionnaire, and so that they had like evidence of how their confidence had grown. And again, that had a positive impact on the learners because they felt they'd actually achieved something in the semester. Obviously, you can use learning objectives to plan courses. You can check if you're using Macmillan, Oxford, Pearson, Cambridge, whoever, you can check your learning materials against these sets of learning objectives to see what they are teaching. Obviously, if it's a Pearson product, we've done that for you, so we give you that information, but you can do it with other publishers as well. And increasingly, and I'm sure this must be true for many people in the room, you are accountable to people. You have to report to your academic director, you have to report to parents, you have to report to learners what they are going to be taught or what they've been taught in a year. The learning objectives is quite a nice shorthand for saying, okay, parent, your student can do these things now. This is what we've covered this year. So it's quite a useful tool if you're writing those reports. Okay, here comes the free stuff. So there you go, and it says free. So all of these learning objectives are available online to download. Okay, we have some copies here, the sexy, glossy copies that we have for conferences, but for your poor colleagues who have missed this amazing experience, you can tell them to go to the website and they can download as PDFs, okay? Or, because there are so many people in this room who weren't even born in 1980, and so you're digital natives, you probably prefer something online database that you can search, okay? So we have something called the Teacher Toolkit, the GSE Teacher Toolkit, and guess what? It's free, okay? So I just want to quickly show you what's in the toolkit and how you can use it, okay? So the toolkit is richer than the PDFs because the toolkit includes all the learning objectives, adult, academic, professional, young learners, and grammar aligned to global scale of English, and vocabulary aligned to global scale of English. So it's got everything you need to plan a lesson, plan a curriculum, plan a syllabus in this toolkit. And the way you use it, so for learning objectives, you have to decide what type of learner am I teaching. Okay, so first select your learner, then search kind of the approximate level that your learner's at. So if they're sort of, A1, A2 or A2, B1. And if you want, you can just look at one particular skill. So for example, general adult course, high A1, low A2, and I want to focus on listening. So I do that selection, and it brings me up a set of 11 learning objectives that I might consider teaching to that group of students, that's appropriate at that level. If you search for speaking and writing, so the productive skills, you will see links to the grammar that you would have to teach or that your students would need to know in order to be able to do that particular functional skill. So it's kind of a linking the grammar to the functional skill. And you can print off your search results. So you can either print off everything, so all 11 of those learning objectives, or you can just select specific ones. So if you want to create a report of what you've covered in the year, you can just click the ones that you've covered and then print it off as a PDF with a QR code so that you can scan it onto a digital device. Grammar, very much the same thing. You select the level. Everything's categorized by grammar topic. So, for example, modal verbs, and you hopefully wouldn't want to teach all modal verbs in the same lesson, so maybe you focus on modal verbs of obligation at a particular level, and here we have 7 that are at the high A2, low B1 area. And similarly, if you search on speaking and writing, you get a link to the grammar. In the grammar, you get a link to the functional learning objective that can be used to practice that grammar in a more communicative way than just doing grammar exercises. Okay? And for grammar only, so grammar only, don't anybody write to me and say, I can't find it for vocabulary or I can't find it for... Grammar only, we have some free resources. So you can click on that. When you see that symbol, it brings you up a list of lesson plans or worksheets. Again, you can just print them off to supplement your own teaching. Okay, just basic worksheets, but they can be quite useful. Vocabulary. I spent 20 years writing dictionaries. I think we should just talk all the way through the break about vocabulary, but this is an amazing, amazing database. It's divided into vocabulary for adults and vocabulary for young learners. And again, you can search by the level, and everything is divided by topic. Okay? If you want, you can just search for the nouns, or just the verbs, or just the adjectives. And so, for example, the environment. At some point, everybody teaches the environment. What vocabulary should I present to my group of students that's appropriate for their level? And it will give you a list of possible words that you might think about teaching. If I have a low A2 group, for the vocabulary, I would search A2 plus and maybe some B1 as well, because you want to present new vocabulary, not just the vocabulary they already know. You will find a definition from a Longman dictionary, possibly one that I wrote. You will find example sentences from a Longman dictionary, definitely one that I wrote. And you will find collocations from the Longman Collocations Dictionary, which I published. Okay. You now can also click on the word and hear the pronunciation in either British or, if you have to, American English. Okay. It's not just about single words, vocabulary acquisition, so you have the collocations, but we also have the functional language in phrases. So if you're sick of hearing your learners saying, I think, you might want to introduce a bit of variety. You can click on ways of giving your opinion and have a range of different phrases. They'll be different for speaking and writing, informal, formal, but it will give you some suggestions of what you might target at appropriate levels. Okay. Right, we're nearly in the home stretch. Assessment. We have lots of assessment products you can buy. I'm not here to sell anything. This is the free stuff. So, assessing proficiency. As I mentioned, language is like a cone. It's like an inverted triangle. So you have the quantitative, I can't even say it. I need coffee. We need to break soon. Quantity, so how many things can you do in a language? And for that, you have the learning objectives. But there's also a quality measure, okay? So what do we have for the quality measure? Ta-da! We have assessment frameworks for speaking and writing for adults on the left and for young learners. And these basically answer the questions, what does speaking look like at A2+? And how is it different at B1? So that's the type of information that somebody who's giving oral exams has in their head or has on a piece of paper. So we're sharing that information with you, and it will tell you if your student is A2, this is what you should expect for fluency, for accuracy, for vocabulary range, etc. And then look at what A2+ looks like, and that's what you would need to get to for your learner to be A2. It's amazing, right? And it's all free. Yeah, I know. We're almost fainting on the front row here. Okay, so that's the website. It's on the back of your handout. This is where all the free stuff is. English.com, not difficult to remember. English.com/GSE, Global Scale of English. You will find lots of blog posts about how to use Global Scale of English practically. You'll find all the research papers about how we developed everything, the grammar, the vocabulary, how we've aligned it to things like IELTS and TOEFL and TOEIC, and then you will find that research paper which gives you the research into how long it takes to make progress in a language, just to prove that I didn't make the numbers up, okay? And then very finally, we're almost at the break. My tongue is sticking to the roof of my mouth. Common European Framework was published in 2001 and has recently been updated. So in September last year, they've released online a companion volume with more descriptors. As you can see, very interestingly, they now include below A1. They have seen that Common European Framework is used in Asia, in the Middle East. People need information below A1. And for us, very excitingly, they have included 50 of the Global Scale of English learning objectives in the Common European Framework. And I hope that is evidence for you to say these are not two different things. They work together, and the Global Scale of English can enable you to see a bit more detail within a Common European Framework level where your learners are. And with that, that's time for the break.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Really, really interesting.
Thank you.
Now for the break, we'll have to go downstairs to the third floor, right? And we'll be there, we'll have half an hour for the break, and then you come back to this floor, and the semi-plenaries will be in this room and the next room, okay? Remember also that, what is it you have to hand in at the entrance? Right, and what colors are they? Pink and light blue, right? Okay, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Can?